Everyone.
Thanks for some time today.
Yeah, of course. Are you enjoying yourself so far?
Absolutely.
Yeah, isn't it the most amazing set? It's crazy, right? Yeah. Well, so I was here just to do a trick for you, but I'm the magic consultant for Deception, and so I'm working hand in hand with any of the actors doing the magic, and then a lot with the writers' room, and my partner David Kwong, who I don't know if you've met or not, but he does more of the West Coast stuff, and I'm doing the East Coast on the ground stuff. So, but I can tell you anything you want to know except how to do it, and yeah. What?
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
how to do it, we all, I think, remember that notorious special on Fox about, what was it, maybe 10, 15 years ago, Behind the Magic Tricks or whatever it is. So how did you guys approach things with this show with that in mind? Not to tick off the magician community here and still make it legit.
That has been a big concern for me from the get-go, and it's always a concern when doing magical consulting for film or TV or even theater. What my goal is with this show, and with any time I work with an actor who's going to be playing a magician, is to make it, first off, the magic as legitimate as possible. Meaning, I want the magic to look like it's a real sleight of hand artist could be doing it, and in this case, Jack is really learning real sleight of hand, and he's doing fantastically. The problem with this, the problem we're worried about with this show is just what you said: is that the network sometimes and the audiences really respond well to how it's done. You know, the Masked Magician, like you mentioned. First off, the Masked Magician shows they didn't really do that much damage to magic. It was more hype than anything else. You know, magicians who are professional magicians would look at it and say, I mean, that's kind of lame that you're showing some of these things, but they're usually antiquated methods and things that they're just not really practical. I mean, I remember watching some of those tricks and saying, that's an interesting way of doing that. That is way harder than I would work. You know, I mean, a lot of the things that we do, we learn to do things magic-wise, sleight of hand-wise, create the simplest way. You know, Occam's razor. We really try to do it in the simplest way possible, because the fewer things you can, you want as few things to go wrong as possible. That said, it's been a fine line, like a tight wire in this show, and the way I look at it is, if we expose anything, we're not exposing real methods, or we're exposing real methods in such a convoluted fashion. There's an episode, I'm not going to give a spoiler on, but there's a reference to a trick that is known as the Blue Room, using mirrors. And if a magician watches the show and says, oh, you know, you're exposing the Blue Room, that's a real stretch, because we're using it's in such a very specific situation where we're trying to rescue a person from this terroristic situation. Like, are we, if a magician complains that we're using that trick to expose, I mean, how often are you doing a trick where you're trying to save a person from certain death? So, I don't know. I don't know if that's answering your question, but we're walking the line. There's only one trick in the second episode that we actually really expose, and it's such a silly little thing. It's something that you'd probably guess as you're watching it how it's being done. But the whole point of it is, in that moment, is allegory to say, like, oh, well, magic is angles. If you see it this way, you see that it's magic. If you see it this way, it's not. So.
Okay.
What skills did you have to, without giving too much, did you have to imbue Jack with, to make him a better magician, or to turn him into a...
What I thought I had to do was teach him basic sleight of hand and muscle movements and control and observation, being able to be aware of your surroundings and be aware of angles. What I didn't realize I was going to be teaching him, or rather what he was going to be learning on his own from me and just his good observation skills, is how to work an audience, how to work with people. And we've gone to magic shows together. I took him to Monday Night Magic, a local New York show. He and I went to see In and of Itself, which if you haven't seen yet, yeah, it's great. Yeah, go see the show. It's wonderful. Derek's a great guy. But anyway, this is we went to see real magic shows, and we'd have discussions afterwards about how, not just how the tricks worked, but specifically how the psychology of the magic worked, and how people are. And so to answer your question, we're teaching him sleight of hand, but also teaching and talking about psychology, and it's usually more like he's asking the questions, and I'm letting him guide the story. So.
Do you think he's been such an apt pupil because of his background in acting and you know, the theater of it all?
I do. I can tend to be verbose, so I'll try to cut this down. But yeah, I do think that every time I've trained an actor in magic, it's been, funny enough, easier and more successful than me teaching other magicians. I teach, in my industry, I do lectures and I write and create and direct for other magicians. And that's always fun, but there's always a... First off, magicians have enormous egos, and it's hard to teach a magician, hey, here's how you should do this, or here's how I'd recommend doing this. And with actors, you know, this is broad generalizations on both accounts, but generally, actors are interested in, they're sponges for information. Like, how do I do the best at portraying this concept? And Jack is one of the best, maybe the best I've ever worked with in that. So he's a pleasure to work with. Really, I embarrass him all the time by saying how good he is, but he is really good. Like, my joke is he really is making me look good. Because I'll show him to the point now where, like, in navigating these episodes, I have to, you know, every director that directs an episode is a little different how you talk to them, and they've all been wonderful to work with. But I always try to be under the radar as much as possible, because I'm not directing, but I am directing the magic in a way. And so if Jack is doing something in between takes, or like, well, in between setups, or the director will go and talk and this and that, when I can, I'll sort of dive in and give Jack a couple of notes. We've gotten to the point after this whole season has gone on that I can just go in and go, just do this in the thing, and he'll go, great. And just a little sign language, and I don't even have to say anything, and he says, got it, and he does it. So, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
What new magic skills have you had to learn while working on this show?
So in addition to learning new magic skills, which are like specifically pickpocket stuff, I'm not a pickpocket artist, and magic is not pickpocketing, but it's magic adjacent, or pickpocket magic adjacent. That said, I've learned and finessed a lot of those kinds of skills, like pickpocketing, or well, that's really the main one, I guess. What's interesting, though, is I'm not so much learning new skills as I'm remembering old skills. And part of it is Jack challenging me, because it's gotten to the point where I'll say, okay, I'm going to give him something difficult to work on, some new coin sleight of hand thing that took me 20 years to practice and learn. And I'll send him a video of this thing, and he'll text me, I'll text him a video, and he'll text me back saying, oh, you bastard. And the next thing I know, I see him 6 hours later, and he said, oh, is it kind of like this? And I'm like, you should not be able to do that at this point. Like, that's not fair. So he's challenging me, funny enough, to relearn old stuff that I haven't done in years, and it's been great. So yeah, it's more like I'm getting re-brushing up on my own skills. So.
I was going to say, in the pilot, there was a comment by one of the characters that we're not magicians, we're illusionists. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
What do you feel about
I mean, my personal feel on it is different from, I think as many magicians are in the world, or illusionists in the world, there are probably that many difference of opinions on it. I think a lot of this, and this is more influence on or back and forth with the writers, like when in the writer's room, they have ideas and they run them by me and David to talk about, like, oh, well, here's what magicians believe in, or what we don't want. What should we? Do we prefer to be called magicians or illusionists? That's point of preference. It's a preference point. I don't think there's a difference. I mean, I think it's a pretentious thing, really, but generally, when you think of an illusionist, it's more someone who does a grand scale illusion show, like cutting people in half and floating cars and things like that. So it's a squares and rectangles thing. I think all illusionists are magicians, not necessarily magicians are doing illusion shows. That said, it's really a semantic thing. But I tend to steer away from those kind of, labeling things. Like, you call me whatever you want, I don't care. Are you entertained? Great. So.
On either a project you've worked on or something you've seen in the theater or television, as a magician, has there ever been an instance where you just saw something, or something that gets just consistently wrong about magic that media and pop culture gets? Those cringe moments where you're like, ugh.
funny enough, I think there are cringe moments in. I mean, I won't say there are cringe moments in this show, but there are moments where it's usually terminology or for example, in the show early on in a couple of episodes, the writers would put something in the script and we'd say, it's really not called that. We wouldn't refer to it as that, but here's an alternative. And the writers will either say, yeah, that's great, and they'll change it, or they won't. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I feel like with every show, there are going to be perfectionists. There are going to be magicians who watch the show and say, oh, that's unrealistic, or that would never happen, or that's not the name of this. I don't really care. I mean, what I mean by that is I care to make this show, from the magic standpoint, as entertaining as possible and as legitimate and realistic as possible. But at the end of the day, that's not my call. And just as there are certainly, I think medical shows are probably a perfect example. Whatever medicine show, hospital show, I'm sure every doctor ever watching it is going, oh my God, really? That's just stupid. Well, so what? It's as long as it's not blatantly just factually wrong, like a certain film that I recently heard that was not very accurate at all. About circus folk, but anyway, that sort of thing. Is that ambiguous? I don't know. Anyway, it's a tall story. Anyway, but that, as long as things aren't like lying right to the audience and saying this is how something is, that doesn't bother me.
So do you think that these mainstream specials like Chris Angel or David Copperfield, do you think that they're hurting or they're helping the craft itself?
I think anytime you see magic on television or film, it helps. Even bad, like they say, bad press is still good press, or still press. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I mean, my background's in advertising, and there are such things as bad ads. But there's one of my mentor heroes is Teller, Penn and Teller, and Penn and Teller, yeah. Again, I mean, I have nothing but good things to say about them, but they have. Penn once said about magic is people would complain, what do you think of David Blaine or whoever was on the show on the TV at the time, and he'd say, we love it because he's on TV. They're not going to go and see him, but they're going to want to go see magic, so they're going to come see our show. And so when you see magic on TV and if it sparks an interest, I do think this show is going to make some young magicians, young people become interested in magic, and maybe some not so young people. So I think it's good. No?
Cool. Great.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, you want to see them? Yeah, they're all
Oh,
reading.
yeah.
It's like, all right, I don't really want to ask any questions. I want to see a magic trick. Would you like to see a trick? Yeah. Well, I'll give you. I'll do something quick here with cards, since that seems to be the thing that Cameron Black often does. The reason people ask why so many card tricks, it's usually because cards are just easy to carry around with us. There's no cards and coins, small objects, but cards, everyone kind of is familiar with them on some level. Even if you don't really know the suits and values, you recognize them from a game. So, an observation test. What is your name?
Leah.
Leah. Excellent. Nice to meet you, Leah. And let's see, Leah. I'll tell you what. We'll do this. Did you happen to notice what color the backs of the cards were?
Blue.
Good. Okay. Observation test. It passed perfectly. It wasn't really much of a test because I've had them out. But Leah, let's change this. Let's do this. How about Leah? I'd like you to just do this. Just name a card that you see in here, please. I'll hold it up. It'll be easier for you.
8 clubs.
8 of clubs. Is it? It's about halfway down, I think I saw. 8 of clubs. Okay, 8 of clubs. About halfway down. Let's try this differently. Give the cards a little bit of a shake. Give them a shake like this. It looks like they change. Not just one or two. Every single card should change. Right. Weird, right? Almost. I hadn't warmed up here. One card still. What was your card? The 8 of clubs, right? I don't know how you knew that was going to be the only one. So let's not use the 8 of clubs. We'll put this off to the side. And how about straight across the table? What is your name?
Gerald.
Gerald? Is that
Yeah.
right? Gerald, why don't you just reach in and take one for me, please?
Take one?
Yeah, if you will. There you go. Show it around. Okay. I don't want to see it. Doesn't matter, though. All right, you got it? Remember yours, and then go ahead and put it back wherever you like, please. That's fine. Good. And you went specifically away from... No, that was fine. That was good. You saw that little gap there, and you were saying, I don't want to put it there because I don't trust the magician.
No, I do trust you.
Fair enough. I don't take it personally. So. Let's see. A little shuffle, make it look like I'm not cheating. By the way, these are the kinds of things that we've been working on with Jack. He's able to do a lot of these already, and like this kind of thing, he'll ask him to show you a card trick later, and he'll probably get one of those out. But let's see here. You remember what your card was? Let's see if I go 1, 2, and 3. That was Leah's card. That wasn't yours. That was what was yours? What was yours? You can say.
Oh yeah, King of Spades.
King of Spades. I think I jumped the gun a little bit. That was the King of Spades. Pretty strong.
Nice.
Anyway, so yeah. And then Jack will be happy to do a trick for you later as well. And but does anyone have any other questions for me?
Were you involved in the apartment the set at all? Putting that together?
By not putting it together, I've Anne, the production designer, has done first off an amazing job. I think that set is just phenomenal. Like any magician that's been in there, and David, my partner, and I. Both, when we first saw it, we're like, oh my god, I want to live here. It's a magician's dream. But we've had little bits of influence here and there. Like Anne would, from the beginning, before they even built anything, would call us and say, what about this? What can we design here? What would be cool? And we'd be like, oh, this is crazy. I don't know. It's a dream come true. You mean we can do anything? So we had ideas and influences on like secret passages and stuff like that. But that usually made more into writing aspects than anything else. But I mean, we influenced it, but I think it was mostly Anne's, and I know it was mostly Anne's design. So she did a lot of research on it. Yeah.
I just have a selfish question.
Yeah. You can all ask at the same time. That's what I say.
Do you know Matthew Holtzclaw?
I do.
Yeah, that's my buddy.
Oh, great. No,
Yeah,
Matt's great.
That was it. I just wanted to know if you knew him, because I think of him as an incredible magician, but I don't know what his
he is.
reputation is.
He's very
I just know him as Matt,
within
so.
Magic. He's very well respected as well. Just as a side note, he's also a consultant. Specifically works with Teller. We share that common friend, and Teller and Matt is he's brilliant. He's also a he and I did Penn and Teller Fool Us at the same time.
Okay.
We were shooting the same
That's
week,
weird.
so yeah. So we're like both getting in the elevator. Oh, you're here. Oh, you're here. That's cool.
Anyway,
So,
not
yeah.
to promote him, but if you guys want to see great magic in New York, he's always doing stuff.
Yeah, he's wonderful. And his alter ego at the Slipper Room is always
Oh my
fun
God,
too.
Sash
Yeah.
me Yeah, amazing. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Any final?
I was
Yeah.
just saying, for the scripting, do you write a trick and then they write around it, or do they, write the episode and then you're like, oh, this trick would work here?
A little of both. Early on, so this show has been, as I understand, every show really is a whirlwind. Like just so much to do all the time. Never enough time to do everything we want to do because it's just such a fun show and so many great ideas can go into it. And the writers have brilliant ideas with it. That said, we early on, I think David and I both influenced more of like, hey, here's a trick idea. What can you write around this, or this would be fun to do. And then I know from my perspective, since I've been here, it's just been on the ground, go, 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 and I haven't had as much time to do those. So it's more like I get the script and David or I or my assistant read the script and we're like, okay, hold on, where can we fit what moments make sense to have magic? And once in a while I'll read it and I'm like, oh man, I want to put a trick in here somewhere, but the story is like, we don't want to have the trick overshadow the story, so like finding the right places. So lately it's more like finding the trick that can be the good metaphor or adequate metaphor. Sometimes it's a stretch, but that's on us.
How long have you been doing magic for, and what got you into it?
I've been doing magic since I was 5. I got a Fisher-Price magic set. My parents got me for my 5th Christmas, and I was so excited we got the Fisher-Price magic set cleared to be in the archive somewhere. And I'm like, I don't think in the cuts I've seen it appear yet, but we have it, and it's officially. I'm like, oh, this is so great. But yeah, so my first magic set was fun. So I've been doing it full time though since 2000, so 18 years. Everything from little kids' birthday parties up through network television shows, presidential inaugurations, and local VFWs. So like, so a little everything. So.
Is this your first time
inauguration?
working with David?
David Kwong?
Yeah.
No, David and I have been working together for years because he and I met at the Magic Castle a few years ago and immediately connected. I was working in the castle and he was visiting at the time. We both worked there on and off, but he saw my show and immediately we connected on a nerd level. Like I do tricks with Scrabble words and Scrabble tiles and esoteric kinds of nerdy stuff, and we hit it off, had lunch, and said, this is great. And then since he was working for DreamWorks at the time, he started getting into consulting stuff, and the way we work great together because David's really good at connections, networking, business, and all that stuff, and has a good solid magic knowledge and base. I'm not like good at that stuff, but you give me a problem and I will just sink in and grab onto it until I solve it. So like we do a really good balance kind of thing as a team. So we've done a handful of features, independents, and I do some theater stuff as well. Cool.
What was that about the inauguration?
Oh, I'm trying not to say anything. Last two real inaugurations we had for the same person. I did. A team of magicians worked for Obama's first and second. We did the Salute to Heroes ball, and it was, yeah. I know. It's, someday we'll get back to it real well. But anyway, so yeah, I worked with those and entertained for Medal of Honor recipients and politicians and everything. So yeah, black tie affair down in DC, and yeah, it's great. Really cool. And I wasn't asked, but I would have denied this year's or last year's. Anyway,
Good times.
yeah. Anyway. So all right. That's it. We're good.
Yeah,
Cool.
thank you so
Cool.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks
Appreciate
again.
it.
Enjoy the show, and yeah, Jack will. I'm sure pester Jack to do something. I'll he'll be all shy and act nervous, but he's really good. So.